Welcome to the deep dive. This is where we take that pile of sources. You've got the articles, the studies, maybe even hidden notes, and we basically pull out the crucial stuff, the insights you need.
Our job is to make you instantly informed, minus the homework.
And today, we're pointing our lens at something huge, culturally speaking. The year 1984.
Everyone knows the book, right? The whole Big Brother thing, the surveillance state. And of course, George Orwell, the author, praised for his, well, almost eerie foresight.
But here's the twist our sources are suggesting. What if the story we all know about how that famous year got its name? What if it's not the full picture? Maybe even fundamentally wrong.
Yeah, we're not just tweaking the edges here. This could be a major historical correction.
It seems we're diving deep into the intellectual backstory of the novel. We're looking at this idea of ghost labor and discovering that the year itself, 1984, was apparently coined by someone else, a woman.
And her vision of what that year meant was radically different from the one that became world famous.
Okay, this changes things. Let's unpack this. Who are we talking about?
We need to start with Eileen O'Shaughnessy. Now, she's often mentioned just as the wife of Eric Blair. That's the man who, became George Orwell.
Right.
But she was much more than that. She was Oxford educated, a poet in her own right, a serious thinker, a literature scholar.
So operating in the same intellectual circles as Blair, maybe even before him in some ways.
Definitely. And mapping out these ideas potentially a full decade before his major works really took off.
Wow. Okay, so what's the key evidence?
It centers on this speculative satire poem she wrote. Get this, it was written in 1934. 1934. And it was titled End of the Century, 1984.
Whoa.
The sources are pretty clear on this. She's the one who first used 1984 as this symbol for a kind of dystopian future.
1934. That date feels really important. What was happening then? What was the mood?
Well, think about Britain at that time. One source calls it a period of tightening. You've got austerity measures, the shadow of World War I still lingering, and this growing fear of fascism rising across Europe.
A pretty grim atmosphere.
Exactly. Imperial decline meeting rising state power. It was this climate of, let's say, restraint and political anxiety. And into that, she picks 1984, 50 years ahead, as this endpoint, this moment of, collapse.
So it wasn't just a random number pulled out of a hat later. It had a specific context, a 50-year horizon.
Precisely. Which makes this discovery feel less like a footnote and more like rediscovering a foundational voice.
Yeah.
Someone who set the coordinates for how we thought about the future, about dread.
And that rediscovery immediately forces us to talk about authorship, doesn't it? And how credit gets assigned. Or erased.
It leads straight there. There's this quote from one of the critics in our sources that just nails it. It's quite devastating. Eileen named the future. Orwell filed the patent.
Oof. Yeah, that phrase sticks with you. It really captures that institutional side of creative work.
Right. It does. And it also brings up the question of names. Why do the sources make a point of calling him Eric Blair, not George Orwell?
Yeah, I noticed that.
Well, the thinking seems to be that George Orwell is the brand, right? It's the myth of the lone genius, the prophet. Using Eric Blair, as the sources do, is an attempt to, quote, undo the myth.
To bring him back to ordinary flesh, as they put it.
Exactly. It highlights the fact that he consciously constructed this Orwell persona, which cemented his legacy, but maybe unintentionally, maybe not, helped obscure Eileen's original contribution.
So the very book famous for warning about the Ministry of Truth, about rewriting history.
Participated, in a way, in rewriting its own origin story. The irony is pretty thick.
It feels like a classic case of what's sometimes called ghost labor.
Absolutely textbook. Eileen fits right into that long history of partners, wives, editors, typists, muses, assistants, whose ideas and work become the essential groundwork.
But their names aren't on the final product.
Right. Their signatures are missing when the official patent is filed, so to speak. The system often remembers selectively, deciding who gets labeled the author and who's just the support.
But let's play devil's advocate for a second. Is it possible Blair admired her work, her poem, and used the year as a kind of tribute, not necessarily malicious erasure?
That's a fair question, and it's hard to know the exact intention, obviously. But the sources lean towards appropriation, mostly because, as they state, Orwell took it whole, name and all. There is no documented explanation from him saying, I'm using this year because of Eileen's brilliant poem. It just appears. So whether it was deliberate theft or simply convenient borrowing, the result was the same. Her original authorship got buried.
Okay, so this is where it gets really fascinating for me. He took the year, the number 1984. But did he take the idea behind it? Because their visions of tyranny sound completely different.
Radically different. Yeah, let's dig into that. Eileen's 1934 poem, End of the Century, 1984, the tone is described as eerily calm.
Calm.
Yeah,
Not what you expect from dystopia.
Right. It's not about sudden, violent revolution. It's a prophecy of quiet catastrophe. She even called it the peace of annihilation.
Wow. That's chilling in a totally different way from Big Brother. So no thought police, no Room 101. How does control work in her world?
It's not based on fear or pain. It's based on sedation, on ease, on optimized living, I guess. She pictured a tyranny that disciplines people through pleasure and relief, not suffering.
How so?
Her 1984 is clean, it's efficient, everyone is obedient. People are described as, quote, bronzed and empty. Physically healthy, yes, but sort of intellectually hollowed out.
So the oppression is almost environmental, psychological.
Yeah.
Comfort becomes the cage.
You got it. Thought doesn't need violent suppression because it's been deactivated or maybe outsourced. She had this incredible image of thought being broadcast from telepathic Station 9.
Like direct download conformity.
Kind of. Why bother with spies when you can just pipe the approved thoughts directly into people's heads? Her real fear wasn't pain. It was the surrender of meaning itself, bought by convenience. That smile that never fades on a population tamed by comfort.
Okay, now put that next to Eric Blair's or Orwell's 1984 that we all know.
Total contrast. Orwell's is all about political domination through state, terror, constant surveillance, violence, that famous image, the boot stamping on a human face forever.
Yeah, very visceral, very external.
His fear is external control, ideological purity enforced by pain. Eileen's fear seems to be more about internal surrender, cultural domestication, being lulled into compliance by having all the rough edges smoothed off life.
And okay, this is the point, isn't it? This is where Eileen's vision suddenly feels, well, incredibly relevant to you listening now. Maybe even more relevant than Orwell's.
I think arguably yes. You could say we're living much closer to Eileen's 1984 today.
How do you mean?
Well, think about that telepathic Station 9. What do we call the modern version?
A feed.
Exactly. A personalized algorithmic feed. Conformity isn't state mandated so much as it's suggested, optimized, rewarded with likes, with dopamine hits.
We're nudged, not forced.
Right. We're soothed by corporate wellness culture, productivity hacks, life optimization, all aimed at efficiency and a kind of smooth, frictionless existence. It distracts from deeper, maybe more disturbing critical thought.
She talked about a fascism that flatters, not frightens.
Yeah.
That feels uncomfortably familiar. All this focus on optimizing ourselves, our diets, our schedules, our social scores.
It maps pretty closely to her vision of those bronzed and empty people, doesn't it? Healthy, productive, but maybe losing something essential.
The control isn't a guy in a uniform. It's the system designed to keep us comfortable, scrolling, and, well, compliant.
She saw that shift coming, from tyranny enforced by the state to tyranny welcomed for its convenience.
And the ultimate irony, the real kicker, is that the woman who foresaw this future, where poetry, disturbance, individuality might vanish in favor of bland compliance,
had her own voice, her own disturbance, flattened out and buried under the very myth she helped inspire.
It's like her fate perfectly mirrored her warning.
It really does. She predicted this kind of cultural erasure and then became a prime example of it.
So, what's the takeaway here? What does recovering Eileen's story, her vision, actually do for us now, beyond just setting the record straight?
Well, I think reclaiming her name, her specific warning, is itself an act of resistance. Resistance against what one source calls that algorithmic drift we were just talking about.
How so?
Reading her, thinking about her vision, forces us to confront the ways we might be voluntarily giving up parts of ourselves for that comfort, that ease. It's like reversing the current, maybe undoing that mental cremation she worried about.
It challenges the foundation of the future we might be building or drifting into. By remembering her, we're kind of reasserting the importance of those rough edges of disturbance.
Absolutely. It's like taking back the blueprint. One source described time itself not as a straight arrow, but as a manuscript.
A manuscript.
You know, like overlapping pages where the past can rewrite the future and the future can reinterpret the past. We're not necessarily past 1984, either Eileen's or Orwell's version. We might still be sort of tracing its path.
And her version, the tyranny of comfort, might be the more insidious one because it doesn't feel like tyranny at all.
It feels like progress.
Yeah.
Which leads us to a final thought, something for you to maybe wrestle with.
Okay.
If we are still operating within the gravitational pull of 1984, how does knowing its true origin story change things? knowing it came from this woman, Eileen, whose vision of quiet, comfortable compliance seems so close to our reality, does that give us more power to, as the sources say, change its spin? The woman who named the year ended up buried beneath it. So the question for you is, what act of authorship in your own life, what inconvenient thought, what personal disturbance maybe that you've let get smoothed over by the feed do you need to reclaim?